This is Going to Hurt, by Adam K. Introduction. Imagine for a moment a young woman determined to surprise her boyfriend with a marriage proposal. She's bought a beautiful ring, but she wants the moment to be unforgettable, a story they'll tell for decades. So she comes up with a plan. A plan that involves a chocolate egg, the kind with a toy inside, and a very, very intimate hiding place. The idea is that during a romantic moment, her partner will discover the egg, open it, and find the ring. It's unexpected, a little shocking, and deeply personal. But things don't go according to plan. The egg gets stuck, rotated sideways, and no amount of effort from either of them can retrieve it. She's so committed to the surprise that she refuses to tell him what's wrong, only that they need to go to the hospital. And that is where she meets a young doctor. His job, on this particular day, is to use a pair of long forceps to deliver not a baby, but a kinder surprise egg. After he successfully retrieves it, he hands the man a pair of latex gloves so he can open it without touching. Well, anything else? Right there, in a hospital cubicle, she pops the question. And he says yes. This story, in all its absurd, hilarious, and strangely human glory, is just one single entry in the secret diaries of a junior doctor. And it perfectly captures the world you're about to step into. The book we're exploring today, This Is Going to Hurt by Adam K., has sold millions of copies and been turned into a hit television series for one simple reason. It pulls back the hospital curtain and reveals a world none of us were ever meant to see. Adam K. was a junior doctor in the UK's National Health Service, the NHS, for 6 years. Every day, after grueling shifts that could last 12, 16, or even more hours, he'd go to his on-call room and write down what he had seen. The funny, the tragic, the disgusting, and the profound. He did this as a form of therapy, a way to process a job that was pushing him to the very edge of his limits. He eventually left medicine, and years later, he rediscovered these diaries. What you're about to hear isn't just a collection of shocking medical stories. It's the story of a journey. It's about what happens when a bright-eyed, idealistic young man, who spent years of his life learning how to save others, finds himself in a system that seems designed to break him. By the end of our time together, you will understand the hidden emotional price paid by the people who dedicate their lives to caring for us. You'll see why a doctor's smile can hide a world of exhaustion, and why the sound of a beeper can feel like a phantom limb, long after they've left the hospital for good. This is the story of what it truly means to be a doctor. Book summary. Every doctor makes their career choice when they're about your age, around 16 or 17 years old. It's a decision made years before you're legally allowed to do many other things, yet it sets you on a path that lasts a lifetime. Adam K. reflects on this, noting that at 16, your reasons are usually quite simple. Maybe your parents are doctors, or you like a TV medical drama, or you have a noble dream of curing cancer. He admits he never really made an active decision. It just seemed like the default setting for his life. His dad was a doctor, and he went to a school that was essentially a factory for producing medics and lawyers. And so, after acing his exams, he went to medical school. For 6 long years, he learned everything there is to know about the human body. He memorized every bone, every muscle, every disease. He became an expert in the theory of medicine. By the time he graduated, he felt like a coiled spring, ready to leap onto the wards and turn all that knowledge into practice. He was finally a doctor. And then, the real world hit. His first year was as a house officer, the most junior doctor on the totem pole. He quickly discovered that medical school hadn't prepared him for the reality of the job. During the day, it was mostly administrative work. He was a glorified personal assistant, trailing behind senior doctors on their rounds, writing down hundreds of tasks, book an MRI, order a blood test, Fill out a form. It was mind-numbing, and the days were brutally long, often stretching for hours beyond what he was paid for. But the night shifts were a different universe entirely. At night, the junior house officer is left alone to care for every single patient in the hospital. Hundreds of them. While the more senior doctors are down in the emergency room, the junior doctor is upstairs, sailing a massive ship that's on fire, with no real training on how to steer it. He describes the constant, unrelenting sound of his bleep, a small pager calling him from one emergency to the next. A patient with chest pain on one ward. A patient with a severe infection on another. A patient who stopped breathing on a third. It never stopped, all night long. These weren't straightforward cases either. These were patients already in the hospital for one serious illness, who were now developing another one on top of it. A patient with liver failure who now also has pneumonia. A patient with epilepsy who has fallen and broken their leg. It was sink or swim. And you had to learn to swim, because if you sank, a lot of patients sank with you. In those early days, the humor is what kept him going. He tells the story of his first day, when he received his new email address, adam.k@nhs.net. Adam, not Adam. He found it comforting to know that no matter what mistakes he made, he could always blame them on Adam. He writes about an elderly patient with dementia who thought he was a German professor. The man would follow Adam on his rounds, wearing his hospital gown backwards like a doctor's coat, shouting out "That is correct" and "genius" after everything Adam said. It was like having his own personal cheerleader, and in those moments of profound self-doubt, it actually helped. The partnership sadly ended when the professor had an accident on the floor next to him. But the darkness was always there, waiting. He recalls the first time he ever saw a patient die. It was a man with liver failure whose throat essentially exploded, spraying blood everywhere. On Adam, on his senior colleague, on the walls, the ceiling. He describes the sound of the man choking on his own blood with every breath. It was horrific, brutal, and a universe away from the peaceful, cinematic deaths you see in movies. After the patient died, his senior, a registrar named Hugo, took him outside for a cigarette. Adam had never smoked before, but that night, he started. The job demanded an almost inhuman level of endurance. One week, he calculated that he had worked 97 hours. The European law, the Working Time Directive, was supposed to limit shifts to 48 hours a week. But doctors were simply asked to sign a form opting out of it. There was no choice. The system depended on their willingness to be broken. And the pressure took a toll on his personal life. His partner, referred to only as H, appears throughout the diaries as a figure of incredible patience. She packs him lunches, endures his constant exhaustion, and accepts that Christmas will have to be celebrated on January 6th because he has to work. He describes the Pavlovian response he develops to his bleep. Out at a restaurant, the buzzer that signals their food is ready has the exact same tone. He reflexively jumps to his feet, his heart pounding, his pulse racing. Work had given him a form of PTSD. After a year, he graduated to become a senior house officer, or SHO. This is the point where a doctor chooses their specialty. After ruling out everything else, surgery was too much like carpentry, dermatology was for people who didn't like emergencies, and geriatrics was just too sad. He chose obstetrics and gynecology. Or, as it was charmingly known in medical school, brats and twats. He liked that in obstetrics, you often end up with twice the number of patients you started with, which is a much better average than most other fields. It was a mix of medicine and surgery, and it offered the profound joy of delivering babies and helping couples build families. He knew it would be difficult when things went wrong, but he believed the highs would be worth the lows. His first year in OBS and Gyna was a whirlwind. He had to learn how to deliver babies with forceps, which he describes as metal salad tongs you use to pull a baby out by its head. He had to learn to perform a Venthouse delivery, which is essentially a tiny vacuum cleaner with a suction cup. He also had to perform his first cesarean section. His supervising registrar, a cocky but funny man named Ernie, simply introduced him to the patient as the surgeon for the day, giving him no choice but to start cutting. The C-section, which should have taken 25 minutes, took him nearly an hour. He was so focused on not making a mistake that he barely registered the miracle of what he was doing. The stories from this period are a perfect mix of the sacred and the profane. One day, he's dealing with a cord prolapse, a serious emergency where the umbilical cord comes out before the baby. The procedure to fix this requires the mother to be on all fours while the doctor kneels behind her, holding the cord inside with a hand sheathed in a long glove called the gauntlet. As he's in this intimate position, the woman's partner walks in. He'd been warned what to expect, but he still looks on in horror and exclaims, in a thick Scottish accent, "You didn't say he'd be wearing her like sooty." Another day, he spends months visiting a premature baby, born at just 26 weeks, on the special care baby unit. He calls the baby his little pal and feels a genuine sadness when the baby is finally well enough to go home. He leaves the mother his phone number, against all hospital rules, and asks her to send him pictures. He just wanted to know the end of the story, to see that his work had made a lasting difference. As he moved up the ranks, becoming a registrar, the responsibility intensified. Now, he was the one running the labor ward. He was the one SHOs called when they were in over their heads. He describes it as a constant logic puzzle, like the one with the fox, the chicken, and the bag of grain, except there are a dozen chickens, they're all delivering triplets, and the boat is made of sugar. He tells a story of a particularly chaotic night shift where he's in the middle of one emergency C-section when his SHO runs in to say another patient has a dangerously slow fetal heart rate. He has her take a picture of the heart rate trace on her phone so he can see it. It's bad. He puts a temporary dressing on the first patient's open abdomen, runs to the next room, delivers the second baby with forceps, and is immediately called to a third emergency next door. It's a medical decathlon, running from one life or death situation to the next. By the time he gets back to his first patient, nearly 90 minutes have passed. He tells his story to the registrar taking over the morning shift, expecting to be hailed as a hero. The registrar just shrugs and says, "Yeah, that happens. It was just another night on the job." This pressure began to have a visible effect. He had to wear a 24-hour blood pressure monitor, and the results were stark. In the hospital, his blood pressure was dangerously high. The moment he got home, it returned to normal. A patient in the clinic noticed the monitor on his arm and said something that stuck with him. "It's funny. You don't think of doctors getting ill." He realized that patients don't see doctors as human. They see them as infallible machines. They don't think about the fact that their doctor might have missed lunch, might be exhausted after a 12-hour shift, or might have a home and a family they'd rather be with. And then came the day that changed everything. He was a senior registrar by this point, the most senior doctor on the ward overnight. He was in the middle of a cesarean section on a woman who was in labor. As he cut into her uterus, he was met not with amniotic fluid, but with a torrent of blood. It was a placental abruption. The placenta had torn away from the wall of the uterus, cutting off the baby's oxygen supply. He knew instantly that the situation was critical. He tried to deliver the baby, but something was in the way. It was the placenta itself. The patient had an undiagnosed placenta previa, meaning the placenta was blocking the exit. This should have been caught on a scan. She never should have been allowed to go into labor. He delivered the placenta, then the baby. The baby was lifeless. The pediatricians tried to resuscitate it, but it was too late. The baby had died. And then, the mother started to bleed. Not just bleed, but hemorrhage. 1 liter, then 2. His stitches weren't working. The drugs weren't working. He called his consultant, who was at home, and told her to come in urgently. The blood loss was now 5 liters. That's more than the entire volume of blood in a human body. He was squeezing the woman's uterus with both hands, the only thing that was slowing the bleeding. The consultant arrived and tried another technique, but it didn't work. He could see the panic in her eyes. They called another, more experienced surgeon to come in from home. For 20 agonizing minutes, they took turns compressing the uterus with their hands, waiting for him to arrive. When he did, he performed an emergency hysterectomy, removing her womb. The bleeding finally stopped. The total blood loss was 12 liters. The patient was sent to intensive care, and Adam was told to expect the worst. He went to write up the operation notes, but he couldn't. Instead, he just sat and cried for an hour. That was the last diary entry he ever wrote. In the aftermath, everyone was kind. They told him it wasn't his fault, that anyone else would have done the same thing. But it didn't matter. It had happened on his watch. He was the most senior person there, and he had failed. He was haunted by the might-haves. Maybe if he had checked on her an hour earlier. Maybe if he had spotted a subtle change on the heart rate monitor. That maybe was a ghost that would follow him forever. He went back to work the next day, but he was a different doctor. He became hyper-cautious, performing cesareans for the slightest dip in a baby's heart rate. He stopped letting junior doctors operate, because he couldn't bear the risk. He stopped laughing. He felt bereaved. He realized he couldn't do it anymore. The joy was gone, replaced by a constant, gnawing fear. After a few more months of going through the motions, he quietly hung up his stethoscope and walked away from medicine for good. He writes that he never told anyone the real reason he left. When asked, he'd just tell a funny story about an object stuck in an orifice. He says that some of his closest friends would learn the truth for the first time by reading his book. Leaving medicine was the hardest decision of his life, and it was one he made in silence, carrying the weight of that one terrible night all by himself. Commentary. When you close the final page of This Is Going to Hurt, you're left with a profound sense of two conflicting emotions, laughter and a deep, quiet sadness. The book is, without a doubt, one of the funniest you will ever read. The wit is sharp, the situations are absurd, and Adam K. has a comedian's perfect timing. But the laughter is a Trojan horse. It gets you to lower your guard, to let the story in, and once it's inside, it reveals a heartbreaking truth about the human cost of medicine. The most powerful lesson in this book isn't about medical procedures or shocking emergencies. It's about the emotional armor that doctors are forced to build around themselves simply to survive. They witness trauma on a daily basis that most of us will never see in a lifetime. They see death, they see grief, they see pain. And the system gives them no time and no tools to process it. As Adam says, after the worst day of his life, the expectation was that he would just press the reset button and come back to work the next day. The black humor that fills the pages isn't just for our entertainment, it's a real-life coping mechanism. It's the only way to create distance from the horror, to put a protective layer between your own soul and the suffering you see every day. When he jokes about a patient with a toilet brush inside him, or the man who degloved his own penis on a lamppost, it's funny because it's shocking. But it's also a glimpse into a world where the absurd and the tragic are so intertwined that the only rational response is to laugh. This book matters today more than ever because it reminds us that behind every sterile mask and white coat is a human being. A person who gets tired, who gets scared, who has a family they want to go home to, and who carries the weight of their patients' lives on their shoulders. We expect them to be superhuman, to be perfect, to never make mistakes. But they are just people, doing an impossible job under impossible conditions. So, what can we take from this? Here are a couple of simple actions. First, the next time you find yourself in a hospital or a doctor's office, and you're feeling frustrated about the long wait or a doctor who seems rushed, take a moment. Remember the unseen world of their day. Remember the relentless bleeps, the missed lunches, the emergencies you don't know about. A small act of patience or a simple, genuine thank you can be a lifeline for someone who is running on empty. It's a recognition of their humanity. Second, pay attention. When you hear politicians or news commentators talking about healthcare, about funding cuts, about hospital targets, remember that these are not abstract concepts. These policies have a direct, and often brutal, impact on the people on the front lines. Adam's book is a powerful argument that a health service that doesn't care for its own staff cannot properly care for its patients. Supporting doctors isn't just about being nice, it's about ensuring the health of the entire system we all rely on. That was a summary of This Is Going to Hurt by Adam K. We've touched on the key moments of his journey today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a photograph of a masterpiece. You can see the outline, but you miss the texture, the depth, and the soul of the work. The real power of this book is in living through those diary entries alongside Adam, feeling the whiplash between hilarity and heartbreak on every page. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've discussed today has sparked your curiosity or touched your heart, I urge you to grab a copy. Reading it is more than just learning. It's an experience that will fundamentally change how you see the doctors, nurses, and all the quiet heroes who walk the hospital halls. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, I would be so grateful if you could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that these deep dives are helpful, and it ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.